Hi, my name is Joanne. I'm with the Creative Writing Study Group. And I am here today with Hannibal Hills, and he is a theater actor. And I learned of him through V. James, who he was the narrator, the audio narrator for the Neckar Bashar series. And I have learned he has read many a books. You can find him on Amazon. And I'm here today oh, and I understand that you started your love of storytelling as a child doing family puppetry with your toys.
That's right. I still do it, actually. I still do it for nieces and nephews, and actually for my wife. We have soft toys here, and
So do
I'll
you make
make
your
them.
own stories?
Oh, absolutely, all the
Oh, see,
time.
now you should record your own stories. And
Yeah, I've done a few children's books, and I must admit that was fun. I
oh,
really
okay.
enjoyed that because it was children's stories, and so there's a simplicity and a joy to reading children's materials.
Yeah.
And I just enjoy it. But I love
And
the
they really
puppetry.
respond to the intonation.
They do. They love
Yeah.
they love it when you really dial up the colors on the character.
Yes. And that's what
Mhm.
I have to say. I had heard you through V's book. He gave a sample of it, and
Wonderful.
I was astonished. I was blown away because I gotta admit, he said he did it through Audible, and it's kind of self-publishing. And I was like, I wonder how good these narrators are. And I was blown away because, as I
Thank
had
you.
told you in the email, it's not so much that you had intonation. You can almost hear you acting it out. There was an animated quality about it that I was blown away.
Thanks. Well, actually, I stand up to narrate. I'm actually, as you see me now in my booth, I'm actually standing. I tried about a year ago. I thought, oh, maybe this is a long book and it's non-fiction, and maybe I should just sit down. So I've got a stool in here with me that I used to put my coffee on. And I tried it, and it was constricting, not just my diaphragm, so making it very difficult for me to perform that way, but I found that I couldn't be as animated as I want to. I understand that the Mark Hamill, when he's doing the Joker, etc., he stands all the time because he's a very animated performer. So a lot of the time when you hear and in fact, if you see videos of other audiobook narrators that they post on YouTube, a lot of them are doing this at the moment, you'll see just how physically animated we are
Mm.
when we give these performances. That there's a
Yeah.
lot going on. There's
I've
arm
seen it go,
gestures,
"Ah!"
face,
Yeah.
and and so
Yeah.
so it's quite interesting to watch. So when you're listening to anyone do an audiobook that's particularly animated, unless it's about sort of Bitcoin or something, then there's a lot going on there you're not seeing, but it'd be fun to imagine. So
I was hoping that you can read a piece. I know if this works and V is okay with it, I sent an email to him, but if you can do a piece from his book, the new one, Little Ship of Horrors.
sure, I
And
would
then
love to do
people
that.
that see my audience is writers, and I think it would be great that they hear what a good narrator is and why they should hire a narrator over doing it yourself. Because I
Sure.
have heard books where it's written by the author, and I thought it would be good because the author knew what they wrote, but no,
Right.
not the
You
same.
think they'd be passionate about the characters. And there
Yeah.
are some authors who, Neil Gaiman's the obvious choice here, who are also great performers and can perform their work brilliantly, not just because they love the material, but because they're very lucky that they're not just talented writers, but they're also talented performers. So they bring that to it. But it is unfortunate. I think I've heard J.K. Rowling say that she would never, ever, ever want to narrate Harry Potter because she just couldn't do it. And particularly, I mean, who of us can do it as well as, say, Jim Dale or Stephen Fry? But so it's rare to find those two talents together.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, if you can give us a piece, I would
Well,
appreciate it.
I'll read you a few paragraphs of the opening because no
Okay.
spoilers. To chapter one of, I'm actually wearing my in honor of V, my Little Ship of Horrors t-shirt, which he very kindly sent me. It's nice when we get sent little souvenirs of
He,
now
he is a
I
very
will say
generous person. I
he's
have
a
to admit.
wonderful man.
Yeah.
I've heard him read his own work by the way. He came and visited me, and he sat and he read me some stuff, and he's actually, because he has a bit of a theatrical background, so he's actually a talented narrator in himself. So it's good. So we have this. I'll tell you one thing about reading like this, sort of on a podcast, is if I make mistakes during my read at any point, I can stop and go back. We use a method called punch and roll, which I could go into. So if I misread a word, or my stomachs are the bane of narrators. If it gurgles during the best take we've ever made, often happens. And I can just stop and I go back, and then the software runs me in the last few seconds of what I've been saying, so I can get up to speed and I can start again.
Oh, fascinating.
When you're doing a read like this, I won't get a chance to. So if I make an error, I'm just going to follow on. And
that's one of the fascinating things I'm also finding with this pandemic, is that the big time celebs are doing online, and you see them do things. Oh wait, there's a plane, hold on, and they all sit and they wait, and I'm like, or they're struggling with audio, and I'm like, oh yes, now they know how us little people feel.
Oh, it's the worst. Yeah, I mean, I live in downtown Wilmington, so I live under the flight path. Everybody here seems to own a Harley Davidson or a leaf blower, and those things create low frequency noise, reverberation, and low frequency noise will go for anything. The walls of this booth are 5 inches thick.
Oh,
but
wow.
Low frequency noise, leaf blowers, Harley Davidsons, and airplanes, that'll go through anything. You'd have to be deep underground to be away from that. So, but it keeps most noise out. Birds chirping, that kind of thing. So I can certainly read something, and
yes, please.
And sort of, if you like, if you have any questions, I can talk you through sort of how we go about it and that kind of thing. So,
okay.
And so I'll do my best.
Thank you.
I actually recorded this one a couple of months ago, so it's nice to return and revisit. If you're ready, I'll begin.
Yes, please.
Chapter 1. Nice bumping into you. There are objects that drift slowly through space, riding the eddies of gravitational forces for billions of slow, uneventful years. There are others, comets being a good example, that speed quickly along, driven by the heavy gravity of a star, and there are still others that tear through the vastness of space at unimaginable speed, coming so near the speed of light as to make their very existence a question to any observer. Did you see that? Oh, never mind. I thought I saw something. That sort of thing. But our attention is now drawn to a different kind of object, one that does not rely on gravity alone to push or pull it across space's great distances. Instead, the object is a space-going vessel, an enormous space liner using its own power source, directed by calculations of speed and distance programmed into various computers. Engines thrusting, retros firing, and people, yes, people, giving orders, plotting courses, and making adjustments. This craft, this marvel of man's intellect, is a huge space-going passenger liner, moving along a path seen only by the humans and their computers. The invisible line is a calculated course through the vast emptiness, for you see, this ship has a mission. It has to be somewhere. That is, it has to be somewhere other than where it is now. And soon. So that's just the opening paragraphs there. So
nice.
as you can see, I did a bit of voice
How do you
work.
do, this is what I was thinking, how do you do, I know his characters are mostly male. Right. How do you do a female voice?
Brilliant. Travis Baldry has a great video on this, so I'm going to try and do him justice, about how, because obviously the challenge for a male narrator is doing women, and the challenge for female narrators, right, which I can't speak too much to, is doing men. So say for instance, let me see if I have this, and this helps me move forward. So there we are. So what you do is, it's a several stage thing. First of all, it's always important when you're playing any kind of character, be it a man or a woman, or in case of these stuff, non-human characters, to have the essential truth of that character. And I know I'm sort of getting into the sort of artsy sort of world of acting talk here, but to have the truth of that character within you is very important. So I try and carry the essential truth of their personality. Now, So all characters I do start from my own essence, so to speak. And then with women, and I just realized I haven't turned the air conditioning on in here, and the air's getting a bit short, so I
I
might
was
put that in the
wondering that because I've been in those booths and they are hot.
terrible. Yeah, I didn't press I've got a little button outside that turns the air conditioning on. So.
If you want to pause for a second and do that, I
No,
can
that's
just cut
fine.
this
I'll
out.
carry on
Okay.
about the women. Make my women sound out of breath. So
Oh,
I
okay.
have my sort of bass voice, which is me,
Uh-huh.
and in order to feminize that voice, I bring the voice up higher into my body. So instead of it being down here where it normally lives in my day-to-day speaking, or even lower if I'm doing, a big, deep character, I bring it up into this upper area.
Okay.
Yeah. And you'll notice what I've also done is I've softened the way that I say words. So if I were to read a line, for instance, as um, there's a momentary shock and the requisite struggling to the feet. If I were to read that in a female voice, that would be read as there is the momentary shock and the requisite struggling to the feet. And you see, I've softened the impact of the way the air's coming out, as well as bringing it up. Now, this is very much a standard female voice, quite a young voice, strangely enough. Sometimes you don't know what's coming out.
Which makes me wonder, what if you need a badass woman because she's
Oh, I do
very
those. I do. The villainous woman. Well, then you
Oh, I
you
like
give
that
it a
sound.
nasty sneer to it. I've got one of those in the book I'm doing at the moment, and she would talk like that, and you could just tell in her voice. But I've also brought a certain amount of my own inner evil to that character. Also, I find it easier to make older women sound evil. I did a book with a 400-year-old woman, and she was very nasty.
Oh, that's very
With
good. I like
her,
that.
she was just an unpleasant lady all round. And so, and now I'm going to bring my voice back down to normal. And so that, or I could just carry on as a woman.
That's okay. I'm
And
sorry.
I
I
love
do think it's
middle-aged
very
ladies.
good.
Middle-aged ladies are very like that. Sorry, yeah, I could do this all day.
Well, but I think women do women voices best and
They
guys do guys
do.
voice.
But we have to do them all, and it is, absolutely. I mean, the idea is not to be convincingly female. I mean, I'm sure all
Which
my women sound to a certain extent like I'm in drag. But the idea is to capture the truth of the character, and if you do that, then the listener will follow along with
yeah.
what you're doing.
Which brings me to so as a writer and as posting your piece of work for the auditioners or the potential narrators to read, I would imagine you want a mix of things in the writing that you are giving them to audition for. Do you have any suggestions of what a writer should put up for them to get an idea of the capabilities of the narrator?
Sure. So depending on the genre, you want to choose something representative of the most important scenes in that genre. For instance, I've been, I've auditioned for books that were essentially high action battle scene books, but because they decide, well, I'll just post chapter one, and chapter one is all just gentle exposition,
Right.
the characters finding their way. It doesn't demonstrate how a narrator might handle a high tension scene, and they are difficult to handle well. You have to up the tempo, and you have to show how you manage shouting on the microphone without actually shouting,
Right.
which is about intensity. That's how you do it. You don't actually increase the volume, increase the intensity. If having dialogue, particularly in a fiction book, obviously if it's a self-help book, just post so somebody can talk about how great it is to meditate and stuff like that. So, but if it's got a book with dialogue in it, you want to know how they're going to do the most difficult, unnatural areas of dialogue. So post, if you're looking for a male narrator, post something that was going to show you how they handle female characters. If there's a lot of children in your book, post so you can see how they're going to handle the children, and how they handle the interaction between two different voices, very different voices if possible, because we don't record those separately. We record it all in one thing, and we need to be able to swap between the voices. So be challenging, but do it within a 5-minute sample. So
The
because
battle scene is interesting because you're right, because you want to
it's hard.
make it tense, but you also have to make sure the person who's listening understands, so you can't talk too fast at the same breath.
That's
I
right.
didn't
It's
think of
about
that.
intensity.
Yeah.
That's how you do it. You sort of dial up the intensity of what's happening. Just slightly dial up the tempo, but just make sure that everything's just got a certain bit more adrenaline to it.
Mm.
And if you get that wrong, it leads to some unfortunately sort of comic. I've heard some narration before where people have used that sort of constant adrenalized tension
Mm.
for just every scene, however language. He was walking through the park. The birds were looking quite sweet up in the trees.
I feel like Batman Begins was that way, the movie.
Yeah,
That
right. Yeah.
constant music. It's like you're always on edge.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying.
so be challenging, but
Yeah.
only expect, pick a 5-minute sample. Some authors I've seen post their entire book and just go, well, pick something, pick a scene you like. No, because they'll pick an easy scene and it won't be
How many
demonstrable.
words or pages is 5 minutes?
Oh my God, that's a good question. Post about, give them 500, 600 words.
Hmm.
And maybe
That's
less,
about a
400,
page
500. It
or two.
depends on the pace of the text.
Hmm.
The sort of received wisdom on this is that 9,600 words is about an hour's read, but some of us read slower than, and it depends if it's a fast, difficult, so give them 400, 500 words, give them something to play with, but only expect to get 5 minutes back. If you post 2,000 words, only expect to get a partial back, because we can't spend the time
Right.
recording half-hour auditions for every book,
Right.
because not only do we need to record it, we need to make sure that it's right, so therefore it
Right.
needs to be listened back to. Then we need to do the audio processing on that ourselves to make it of the right quality. There's a lot of post-production that goes into audio.
Which makes me I was thinking how I believe that it is not the author who gets to choose, as some people, they're not necessarily, that the narrator gets to choose what they want to read as well. So if you want to attract the
Oh
reader,
yes.
because I have read some books where there was some spelling errors, not bad, but enough. Like instead of whole HOLE, they spelled it WHOLE, and it was just like, all right, just let it go. But how do you decide which one you would choose? Now, I know you do mostly supernatural and fantasy. I saw you did others like poetry, and I forgot what the
Right.
other one was. But I was wondering, how do you choose it?
Right.
Other than
How do I
genre, how
select?
do you choose? Yeah.
And later on as well, when you've been narrating for a while, people come to you very generously and say, would you like to record this book? And you have to then be able to evaluate that book,
Mm.
just with the various criteria that we do. Um, it's a very good question. How do we choose? And you're right. As narrators become better known, better accomplished, this is one of those professions where the longer you do it, hopefully the better you get at it, and also your reputation becomes
Mm.
better, and so you become more in demand. And how do you attract the good in demand narrators? Well, what do we look for? Saleability. If it's going to be a royalty share, I'll get to what we call PFH, or per finished hour, in a second, but for royalty share projects, which I'd imagine a lot of indie authors are putting out there, as either a royalty share or what ACX calls royalty share plus, which more rightly should be called a hybrid deal, because there's a part payment factor in the royalties. So if we're looking to earn our money mostly off the royalties of a project, we're looking for saleability. And by that, I mean, is the author taking this seriously as a marketing prospect? How do we look for that? Well, obviously sales rank on Amazon is one of the things that we look at. But the cover is vastly important.
Oh, wow.
One of the first things I look at, if offered that, is a cover, because I can see from the cover that the author's chosen how much they understand the marketplace. Do they understand their own genre? Are they willing to invest in a good cover, not just put something together in Photoshop and just throw it out there? And you can tell, however good an author may be at their photoshopping, there's a difference. There's a difference between someone doing their own cover and a professional cover designer, and you can spot it a mile off. And if someone's been willing to invest in a good cover that understands their genre, and Chris Fox writes all about this stuff, and so then great, that's a sign. Next, reading the sample that's available on Amazon usually. And that tells you several things. It tells you about the quality of the writing, and it tells you whether they've actually had the book properly edited or proofed. You're right, nothing is more irritating than reading a really badly proofread or edited book. Sometimes I have to correct as I'm going on. Sometimes that's not possible if the error is that terrible. If they but a lot of the authors I've worked with will tell you that as I'm reading through, there's a lot of stuff, and V mentioned this on his chat with you. There's a lot of stuff that we just, when we're reading, when we have the book in front of us in paper or Kindle, we skip over the errors. Our brain goes, all right, that's fine, we'll just move on from that. But when you're listening, those errors jump into high relief. And so if a book is badly written or badly edited and we were to read it verbatim, then that would be awful. So sometimes I have to correct as I'm going along. But I would prefer a book that's wonderfully written, properly edited and proofed, and that's something I'm looking for.
The book cover, the ranking I didn't think of, but book cover was a surprise to hear, but
huge.
It makes sense. That's interesting.
It's a huge indicator, and a very quick and easy indicator into how much the author is looking at the business aspects of what they're doing, how much they're investing in their book, and how much they understand the marketplace.
Right.
Cover tells you so much, particularly in genre fiction, about how much whoever put that book together understands their market, understands how to attract their, because these days we're all looking at thumbnails on the screen. Readers are looking at thumbnails on the screen. And so having an author or an independent publisher, a smaller publisher who understands that genre, understands their marketplace, is super important, because it's going to affect sales. So I do also read the reviews. So if it's got past that, I'm thinking, oh, it's great cover, ranking's not bad. I look to see how many other books the author's got out, because that shows me the potential they have.
Right. There's so many one-time authors.
Which means they haven't built up a mailing list, or that,
or they don't. They just want, it was a vanity.
Right. They don't really care.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that will often be reflected in the title. It's very rare to find a one-off indie author who gets the title super right for their genre first time.
Yeah, I gotta say Nekapashar, although I had to get the pronunciation from him. That's a great name.
Yeah, it sticks in your head.
Yes, and once you get it too, it just rolls off that Nekapashar.
It's unusual, and it doesn't immediately fall. V's stuff doesn't immediately fall into any of the sort of obvious genres. It is many things. It is comedy. It's also fantasy. And to a certain extent appeals to the young readership. I compare him to a combination of, he's very influenced by Douglas Adams and Terry Pratchett. And
I
in
agree.
this case, if you like Red Dwarf, you'll like Little Ship of Horrors.
There was something he had read to me. I was like, wow, that sounds like Douglas Adams.
Very similar. All his stuff is it's got that same quirky, fun, oddly British sense of humor, even though he's not.
Well, that could be why he chose. I know he said he chose the British, and he said Southern British, and I was like, wow, that's very specific, but
it is.
I suppose that makes sense.
And
that was kind of,
I mean, it carries the comedy well, because American comedy has its own flavor.
Yeah.
And so whereas British comedy tends to be a little bit more, plus, you know, I perform accents from all over the British Isles, and some of the ways that we differentiate characters in this book, there are, you know, maybe a couple of dozen characters, and so is to give them different accents. And in fact, V was keen with Little Ship of Horrors that I give different accents to show the fact that the crew of the ship was a global crew, that they weren't all just, you know, the ship wasn't all populated by British people or Southern English.
That was another interesting tip that I thought V gave, was that he gave you a list of what he wanted from the KISS of it, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Now, what I should do is talk a little bit about the process on ACX. So we talked about the audition and the fact that auditions usually are 5 minutes, and you want to choose a challenging representative section from your book. And anyone who doesn't send you a recording of that, because some people for auditions send in just samples that they have of other books, just eliminate them completely, because it shows that they're just lazy.
Oh, and they may not be finished with their book, which means they may not get back to you.
It's, you know, anyone who doesn't actually audition using your audition script, just ignore them. Now, after that, you put out your offer. And if it's accepted, fantastic. The next stage in the recording of the book is what we call the 15 minutes. So you, they call it the first 15, but a lot of people use that 15 minutes to really showcase how they're going to be dealing with the book. So they pick a section from the book that showcases how they're going to deal with some major characters don't appear until after 15 minutes into the book. A lot of the time it is just the first 15 minutes of the book, including the titles and things like that. So, and the first 15 is then submitted. Before that first 15 is approved, everybody has the opportunity to walk away from the contract. It's just, that is kind of the, is this contract working moment? So without any bad feeling or any punishment from ACX or Audible, before the 15 minutes is approved by the rights holder. So that means when the narrators submitted their first 15 and they press approve, at that point you're much more locked in. Before that, you just, if it's not working out, for instance, if you receive the manuscript and it's a terrible manuscript, or you just don't find that the narrator is really capturing your book as much as you thought, everybody can just walk away at that point. No harm, no foul, move on. I
think V also said he was down to 3 narrators and he was testing the 3 out.
Yeah, he got in touch with us and asked us a few questions. I actually read Nekabashar before I auditioned because it's a quick read and I was fascinated by the book. That's really, really rare. Do not expect your narrators to read the book before they audition. They will study it, and they will, if they've done due diligence on audition, they're looking for the style. If you've got any other audiobooks out there, they've probably listened to the narration done on those to see what type of narration you're looking for.
Right.
And they will have properly prepared the audition script, which means thinking about who the audience is, thinking about characterization, pace, approach, those things.
Okay.
Rare that they, however, it's essential before you record a book, before you actually go out there to record it, the first thing you do is read the book. And what we do is, read it and prepare it, work out how to pronounce things. Characterization is interesting. Authors like V and many authors I work with are wonderful in that they'll send you a character sheet, which gives you just a rough idea of the characters and what they think they sound like. Now, in many cases, my characterizations of V's characters have gone back and he's like, oh, I didn't expect that character to sound like that at all. But that's how they came out in the read. That was the truth of that character ended up being in this book, in Little Ship. There's a security officer character, and I think he envisioned him slightly different than I. He came out much more gruff in the way that I did, but of course he's a security officer, so he's going to be like that, and that was the truth of the character as I understood him, and it worked, and he was happy. Authors, in many ways, if you have a narrator who can do that, should trust the narration. And I will say this about the 15-minute point. Once you've approved that 15-minute, the narrator is under no obligation at all to consult with you on their performance. And so you're effectively saying, yes, I approve what you've done in this 15 minutes. Have at it, record the book.
Oh, wow.
You do not get to micromanage or direct that performance. However,
That could get ugly.
it can, but if you've picked the right narrator and you trust them.
Oh, I mean, if you had someone directing you.
Oh, it's well, you don't want to.
Well, it could go either way, I suppose.
Right. I mean, from my point of view, I can see it both ways. That you don't, but you don't want someone micromanaging your performance, and to a certain extent, it adds so much effort and time if people come back.
I was a software engineer, and you get some people who micro. Shouldn't that button be over there? And
right.
Are you
don't trust your narrator. This is a collaborative process, but you don't. After the 15 minutes, you don't have any right to manage or direct the performance.
That's
you have to trust the performance, and so because you've approved that first. You've said, this is the narrator I want. They've given me enough to know that I can trust them with it, and I have to trust them with it. We don't have the months it takes to re-record different lines. Well, that line could have been said slightly, but we don't have the time to do that. We're professionals. Pay us to do it, absolutely. If you want to pay us the extra hours, but don't do that. So to a certain extent, after the 15 minutes, trust us with that. However, I have worked with some authors because it's been, in my opinion, and totally my choice, worth it for me to be a little bit more collaborative than that. On Necker Bashar, I did share my characterizations of certain characters with V to see whether he liked them. But Little Ship, after the first 15, I went away and I did it, and I came back, and there it is, because that's how it works.
You two have worked together enough at that point too, I think, which helped. Be sure to check out my interview with Hannibal Hills as he talks about his current project, Enter Stage Right, a collection of stories from various authors, including New York bestsellers. All the proceeds go to helping local community theater. You can pre-order now. The published date is June 1st, and Hannibal is currently working with podcasters and musicians to make the audio book. I encourage you to purchase both because it's a great cause. And please like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that bell next to the subscribe button so you can be notified when new videos are put up. Until next time, go forth and write.